Hey everyone, and welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back.
Today we're going to be diving into something
Diving deep.
that's pretty relevant for a lot of us these days, I think, and that's the impact of smartphones
Uh-huh.
and social media on young people.
Yeah, especially on young people. I mean, it's something we all deal with to some extent, but
Yeah.
it's especially important to think about the impact it has on those who are still developing, you know?
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is even Bill Gates,
Oh, wow.
big tech guy, right?
Mr. Microsoft himself.
Exactly. He's actually been recommending this book called The Anxious Generation, and
Interesting.
it really digs into this whole issue. So what's got a tech giant like him kind of sounding the alarm about this?
Well, the book makes pretty strong case that all these smartphones and just the constant social media
Right.
are actually contributing to this rise in anxiety and depression we're seeing among young people. And they even argue that these technologies could be like fundamentally changing how their brains develop.
Okay, so that's a pretty big claim, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a big claim, but the book has some pretty compelling evidence to back it up.
Okay, like what?
Well, one of the things that really jumps out is this statistic that 95% of U.S. teens
Wow,
now have smartphones.
95%.
95% compared to just 23% back in 2011.
That's a huge jump.
It's a massive shift in a very short amount of time, and it just shows how quickly these devices have become like
Yep.
just a normal part of our lives.
It's like they're almost an extension of ourselves at this point.
Right, especially for young people who've literally grown up with them.
Yeah.
But the anxious generation argues that this like always-on connectivity
Oh,
comes
yeah.
with some serious downsides.
So what are they saying? What's the problem here?
Yeah. Well, basically they're saying that all this constant stimulation from our phones, from social media,
Mm.
it's just fundamentally different from the kind of stimulation that our brains like evolved to handle.
Mm.
You know, back in the day, our ancestors would encounter these bursts of excitement or
Okay.
danger. But they were interspersed with these long periods of calm.
Right.
But now with smartphones, it's like we're constantly bombarded
Yeah.
with notifications,
Mhm.
updates, images, things that trigger our stress response.
So it's like our brains are always on high alert.
Exactly. And over time, this can lead to chronic stress and anxiety.
Mm.
It's like a muscle that you're constantly flexing. Eventually, it just gets fatigued.
Right.
And it can even get damaged.
So it's not just about like the content itself, but it's the way that these devices are designed.
Exactly. The book also points out that these technologies are intentionally designed to play on our brain's reward system.
Like those little dopamine hits we get
Yeah, like those notifications.
from our phone buzzes.
Yeah, you get a little buzzing. You get a comment. It makes you feel good.
Hey.
And social media platforms, especially,
Yeah.
are designed to keep us scrolling,
Keep us hooked.
to keep us engaged. Features like infinite scroll, the likes, the comments, all play into that desire for social validation and reward.
It's like those slot machines in Vegas, right?
Mm.
Exactly. They're designed to keep you hooked, designed to keep you there. And instead of gambling with money, we're gambling with our time and our attention. Yeah, our mental energy, right? Exactly. And the book argues that this is having a real impact on young people's mental health.
Okay.
They cite a lot of studies that show a correlation between increased screen time and rising rates of anxiety and depression among teens and adolescents.
And I feel like we're only just starting to understand those long-term effects.
Right. And it's not just about mental health.
Oh, okay.
It's also about attention spans and cognitive development.
What do they say about that?
They argue that all this multitasking and the distractions that come with using a smartphone
Yeah,
make it really hard for young people to focus on things that need sustained attention,
right.
like reading a book
Yeah.
or having a deep conversation.
It's like trying to talk to someone who's constantly checking their phone.
Right, you never really feel like you have their full attention.
And the book goes even further, suggesting that all this stimulation could actually be changing the way young brains are wired,
Wow.
making it harder for them to develop that ability to focus and think deeply.
So it's like their brains are getting used to these little snippets of information.
Right, exactly.
Those quick hits, and then they're losing the ability to process anything that's more complex.
Right, they're not getting that practice.
Yeah.
And the anxious generation argues that this shift from play-based childhoods to what they call phone-based childhoods, it's depriving young people of crucial opportunities for free play and independent exploration.
Which are so important for development.
Yeah, they're essential for developing those cognitive skills like problem solving,
Right.
creativity, resilience.
It's like those kids who grew up in environments with lots of different textures and sensory experiences. They tend to have better motor skills and cognitive development.
Right, exactly.
And it's the same idea here. If kids are always in these digital environments, they're missing out on those real-world experiences.
Right, they're not getting those chances to
help shape their brains.
to experiment, to make mistakes,
Yeah.
to learn from those mistakes.
Right.
So it's not just about the content they're consuming.
Yeah.
It's about the very act of using those devices.
It's changing how their brains work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The anxious generation suggests that all this digital engagement
Yeah.
is creating a generation that's wired for distraction, for instant gratification, for superficial interactions.
And how is that going to prepare them for a world that
Wow.
still demands deep thinking and focus and real connection?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
And the book really paints a stark picture of the potential downsides of this trend.
Okay.
But it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay, good.
The anxious generation also offers some practical solutions for mitigating these negative effects
Okay.
and helping young people thrive in this digital age.
Well, I'm definitely interested to hear more about those.
Yeah, let's dive into those. So
Yeah.
they actually offer some concrete steps we can take to address these issues, and they call them 4 new norms for raising kids
4 new norms. Okay, I like that.
in the digital age.
It sounds
Yeah.
manageable, 4 things we can focus on.
Right.
So what's the first one?
The first norm is no smartphones for kids before high school.
Before high school.
So like around age 14.
Okay. I can already imagine the pushback on that one, but I see the logic. Like, younger kids don't really need that constant connectivity.
Yeah, they really don't. They suggest flip phones if they need to call or text.
Right, for basic communication.
For emergencies, but without all the bells and whistles.
That are so distracting.
Exactly.
So no smartphones before high school. What's number 2?
All right, number 2 is a little more controversial.
Okay.
No social media before age 16.
Okay. That is going to be tough for a lot of families.
It is a tough one.
Because most platforms say 13 is okay.
Yeah,
Right.
they say 13, but those age limits are so easily bypassed.
Right.
And the book argues that even if kids technically meet that age requirement, their brains are still developing and maybe more vulnerable to the negative effects.
And there's that whole thing about how these platforms are designed to be addictive.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, especially for teenagers with those algorithms.
They're designed to keep you scrolling for hours.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of research now that shows all that social comparison and pressure
Yeah.
to present the perfect image online can really damage self-esteem.
Right. It's like you're constantly comparing your blooper reel
Right.
to everyone else's highlight reel.
Exactly. No wonder it messes with your
There's
self-esteem.
so much pressure.
And this really ties back to what the book emphasizes about real-world experiences.
Right.
You need those to develop social skills and a healthy sense of self.
Okay.
They argue that spending too much time in those curated online environments makes it harder for young people to navigate those complexities
Of real life.
of face-to-face interactions and to figure out who they really are.
You're not getting those awkward,
Yeah.
messy, but important experiences
Right.
that teach you about relationships.
And to help you figure out who you are.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got no smartphones before high school,
Right.
no social media before 16.
Mm-hmm.
What's norm number 3?
Norm number 3, ban smartphones in schools.
Whoa, okay, that's an interesting one. I can see that being controversial.
It is definitely controversial.
But I can also see the potential upside.
Yeah, the idea is that school should be a time for focused learning,
Right.
for in-person interaction.
Makes sense.
So by removing smartphones, you're creating an environment where kids can really engage with the material and with each other
Without the constant distraction.
without those digital distractions.
It's like hitting the reset button on their attention spans for
Yeah.
a few hours each day.
Yeah, giving them a chance to actually be present
To be in the moment.
in the moment. And they cite studies that show students who are allowed to use smartphones in class
Yeah.
actually tend to perform worse academically.
It's just too tempting
It's too tempting
to check your phone.
when you should be focusing on a lecture or an assignment.
Right, and then there's also the potential for cyberbullying.
Oh, absolutely.
Inappropriate content.
That's a huge issue.
Much harder to monitor when everyone has a phone in their pocket.
Right. So by banning them in school, you're not just creating a more focused learning environment.
Yeah.
You're also reducing the risk of those negative interactions.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so we've got no smartphones before high school, no social media before 16, and no smartphones in school. That brings us to norm number 4.
All right. Norm number 4, More free play and independence for kids of all ages.
So going back to the good old days,
Right back to basics.
running around outside,
Building forts using your imagination.
using your imaginations.
Exactly.
I love it.
They really emphasize giving kids that time and space to explore,
Right.
to play, to get bored even.
Because boredom can actually be a good thing sometimes, right?
Absolutely. Sometimes boredom is the spark that ignites creativity.
When you're not constantly stimulated.
Right? Your mind has to wander and make its own connections.
And come up with something to do.
Exactly. And they highlight that unstructured play isn't just about having fun.
Oh, okay.
It's about developing essential life skills,
Like what?
like problem-solving, decision-making, risk assessment, conflict resolution, negotiation.
All those things you learn through interacting with other kids.
Yeah, in an unstructured environment.
It's like a training ground for social and emotional intelligence.
Exactly. And they argue that these skills are becoming even more important now
Okay.
in a world where technology is constantly changing how we live and work.
So it's not just about sheltering kids from technology.
Right.
It's about making sure they have the skills to navigate it.
To navigate the world where technology is everywhere.
Okay, so they need both.
They need both.
The ability to engage with tech, but also those foundational skills.
Yes, exactly. And they suggest some practical ways to encourage that unstructured play.
Like what?
Extending recess at school, encouraging outdoor activities, giving kids simple tasks that foster independence.
Right, chores.
Like chores, running errands.
Helping out around the house.
Exactly. It's about empowering them to do things on their
She'll
own.
build that confidence and resilience.
Yes, and it's not just about the kids. The book also says that parents need to model healthy tech habits.
Right, lead by example.
Exactly. If we're constantly on our phones, our kids are going to pick up on that
And think it's normal.
and think it's normal.
So it's about creating a family culture
Mm-hmm.
where technology is used intentionally and mindfully,
Intentionally, mindfully, not just out of habit or boredom.
not just because it's there.
Right.
And I think it's important to emphasize they're not saying technology is bad.
No, not at all.
It's a tool.
It's a tool.
It can be used for good or for bad.
Exactly.
It's about finding that balance.
Finding the balance, being mindful of how we use it, setting healthy boundaries, and making sure kids have plenty of opportunities.
For real-world experiences.
Those real-world experiences that are so crucial for their development.
And you know what's interesting is they found that 38% of teens actually feel they spend too much time on their phones.
That's right. It's not necessarily that they're choosing to be glued to their screens all the time.
Yeah.
They might be craving a break, too.
Right.
They just might need a little help from adult
To set those boundaries.
to set those boundaries.
And find a better balance.
Exactly. And there's this great anecdote in the book about one of the researchers, Zach Roush, who gives his kids these little missions,
Oh, I remember that.
like baking a cake or going to the store.
Right, like little errands.
Yeah, little errands to do independently.
Yeah.
And it says it not only helps the kids build confidence,
Okay.
but it gives the parents peace of mind knowing their kids can handle things on their own.
It's like we have to trust them a little bit.
Right. Give them the space to make mistakes and learn.
To figure things out.
Exactly. And this ties back to the Bill Gates example we talked about earlier.
Right.
Remember he talked about how having that unstructured time to explore,
To just be a kid.
to just be a kid, was crucial to his later success.
That freedom to explore and experiment.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the world we're building for them.
Yeah. It's a big responsibility for sure, but also a huge opportunity
Yeah.
to help them navigate all of this.
So where do we go from here? I mean, we've talked about the downsides of all this screen time.
Yeah.
We've talked about setting boundaries. But what can we actually do?
Yeah. What are some concrete steps?
Yeah, to create that more balanced and healthy relationship.
Well, I think those 4 new norms are a really good place to start.
Okay.
They offer a framework for thinking about it,
Okay.
but every family is different.
Right.
What works for one might not work for another.
So finding what works for you.
Exactly. The key is to find what works best for your family and have those open conversations with your kids
Right.
about the role of technology in their lives.
And empowering them to make those decisions too.
Absolutely not.
Mhm.
Just telling them what to do.
Right, to be participants.
Yeah. Active participants in those decisions, not
Yeah.
just passive consumers.
I love that. And it's not just about setting rules and restrictions, right?
No, it's also about creating other opportunities
Yeah.
for meaningful connection and engagement.
Like what kinds of things?
Instead of just saying, put down your phone,
Yeah.
why not suggest a family game night,
Oh, I like that.
a hike in the woods, a visit to a museum,
Fill those spaces with something else.
Exactly. Something enriching, something that fosters creativity and curiosity and connection.
And we might even learn something from our kids along the way.
Oh, absolutely. They're so adaptable and resourceful.
Yeah.
And they can teach us a lot about using technology in creative ways.
Right. It's like be the change you want to see in the world, right?
Exactly.
If we want our kids to have a healthy relationship with tech, we need to model that behavior.
Yeah, be mindful of our own screen time. Set boundaries for ourselves. And make sure we're prioritizing those real-world things that bring us joy.
Right. It's about remembering technology is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
That's a good way to put it.
It's up to us to decide.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with this thought. The future isn't predetermined.
Right.
It's something we create together,
I like that.
one choice at a time.
Powerful.
And by being mindful of how we use technology and empowering young people to do the same,
Yeah.
we can shape a future where technology enhances our lives.
Instead of diminishes them.
Exactly.
And to our listeners, I'd say, how can you contribute to creating that future?
Yeah, whether you're a parent, an educator, or just someone who cares about young people
What small changes can you make
in your own life and in the lives of those around you?
to foster that more balanced relationship with technology?
These are questions worth thinking about because even small changes can have a big impact.
Yeah, the ripple effect.
Exactly, creating a more mindful, more connected, and ultimately more human world.
And that's a world worth striving for.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those conversations going.